Wendy. How
We
are
did
you?
it very well. It must be early morning. Oh, well, it is kind of cool morning. It's the end of the day here.
Yeah, I've been doing these, of course, out of my apartment, and they just started doing construction. So it's so
Oh,
loud.
you're in your car?
I'm in my car now.
I love this.
So
Good.
yeah, it was necessary, but it works. The internet connection is strong enough, so I'm excited about that.
Good. Very good. Very good.
So you're
Anyway, nice to be here with you all.
it's so nice. I'm so excited about this. You're in Paris right now?
Yeah,
Correct?
I'm in Paris. Yeah.
Okay. Is that where you permanently live?
This is the home, the home.
Okay.
Yes, it is. I have an apartment in New York City because my company, Iles Formula, is American.
Right.
I made it American. So we have a base in New York City, my husband and I, and it's just by sheer chance, in a way, that we left America 3 days before France got locked out of America. So we kind of arrived here, and I'm kind of thinking, oh gosh, thank goodness, because at least here we had a garden and New York was an apartment.
Absolutely. No, it must be
So,
beautiful.
yes, I can see
Very
all these
cool.
nice people joining in. Thank you so much for joining. There's someone from Tasmania, Australia. Hi, Liz.
So, um, I've got some light notes. So if you see me looking down, it's certainly not
It's
out
okay.
of
I
hand.
probably should have had some too.
No, no, not at all. Um, I have learned the hard way that notes are really important for interviews, but I'm
In
learning
case
as
you
we
have a
go.
silent partner. You won't
Yeah.
have that problem with me. I talk a
Okay.
lot. So
Amazing.
I'm told.
No, I love it. So everyone, this is Wendy Iles. She's an amazing hairdresser with a fantastic list of work. It's pretty unbelievable what you do. I always knew, but as I started to research your work and see just how well-rounded of a hairdresser you are and just how many things you've touched in your career, it's really amazing. It's really, really cool.
It kind of is, one life just goes on at such a pace and you really don't think about it. But when you contacted me the other day and said, okay, I want to ask you from the beginning about your childhood, about your
Right.
life and
Mhm.
how it happened and all that. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, can I think back that far? And then I start to think about it. And yeah, there have been a lot of touch points along the way. It's interesting. It's amazing. Life is a beautiful thing.
Totally, totally.
You
I
just have to be
already,
courageous
yeah,
and accept the good things when they're dropped into your lap, and
sure.
not be nervous and say yes and just go for it.
I've got I already know that we have to do two parts because there's too much that I want to talk to you about within 1 hour. So in that case, we can just not be nervous and chill and talk. But you started in Tasmania, Australia.
Well, I was born in Tasmania, Australia, which is
Okay.
I mean, it's very close to my heart. So I grew up there. My father on a big farm on the
Mhm.
northwest coast of Tasmania. So often when I say Tasmania, people say Transylvania. I said, no, it's not Transylvania. It's Tasmania.
Uh-huh.
So really, honestly, I am so proud of that little island. It is so beautiful. And what is so special for me is that I go back to visit once a year, nothing really changes.
Mhm.
And geographically, it is such a beautiful island. I mean, national parks like you've
Yeah.
never seen, gorgeous. Well, in America, you have good ones. Beautiful beaches. My father is an opium poppy farmer, or
Oh wow.
was. He's
Okay.
retired now. And
Uh-huh.
then my brother does that as produce, which is not the reason my childhood was happy, but My father had contract for growing the poppies for morphine, actually, for the
Okay.
hospitals. But I would always go home at Christmas, and it would be 360 degrees of these violet poppies blowing in the wind. It was so beautiful, but
I
of course,
bet.
very, very controlled.
Right. Right.
But anyway, so yes, it was a great beginning. And I guess I often think of that because I love to garden.
Hmm.
I have a big garden here in France, and I love to garden. And I often think of my parents, farmers, and it's in my DNA. It
Yeah.
certainly is.
Sure. I still live in an apartment in Los Angeles, so I haven't got to see if it's in my DNA yet, but I would like to at some point, you
Oh,
know.
you have plenty of time. You
Yeah.
have plenty of time.
So I've watched a few travel shows about Tasmania. I've never been, but is there like it's it seems really remote. Is there kind of a fashion thing? Is there
Oh,
anything to
no.
grasp onto there?
Oh, no, no, not at
Okay.
all. No, not at all.
Okay.
No, it's interesting that, um, that, how do you say, that whole adventure of leaving the farm and doing what I did, in fact. So, since I can't remember, and a lot of passionate hairdressers will have this same story, you kind of grow up with a comb in your hand. You know, I obsessed with hair. I still am obsessed with hair. And I remember as a child, all my dolls were being coiffed and cut, and it was always that Barbie dolls were important to me, and then my father made me a Wendy house in the garden. I think in America you call them Wendy houses, right? Those little tiny playhouses,
Yeah. I,
which was a salon, of course. I
right.
turned it into a make-believe salon. So hair has always been there in my life since I can remember. And so, do you want to know about that hair journey from
I mean, yeah,
Tasmania?
absolutely. Well, I know that you started, in a salon. Was
Yes.
that in mainland Australia or was that in
No.
Tasmania?
So, I want to come back to that
Okay.
later. I'm going to kind of fast forward, but
Sure.
that salon in Australia, I did my 4-year apprenticeship. Okay. I saved my pennies, and I did a trip to London, and I was in London. I had an amazing time at Vidal Sassoon in London. That was in the early 70s, and I tried to put a date on it today, and I didn't quite get it together, but it was for a few years in London.
Hmm.
I was one of the first to bring back to Australia the Vidal Sassoon technique.
Insane. That's insane. Yeah.
So I brought that back to Australia, and to a salon there. I mean, it was at the time hair was being revolutionized.
Hmm.
There was still coiffure happening, the big bonnets and the roller sets and blow dries. I remember discovering blow dries back then. I'm sounding like a dinosaur. I
It's
kind of am.
crazy.
But I
Yeah.
started very, very young.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
started in that salon I was 14 going on 15 when I was offered 2 apprenticeships. I finished school, and I chose one of those apprenticeships. And I have to say, thank goodness I chose the salon I did. I was lucky enough to be able to choose back then. As a freelance hairdresser, which is a lot of the archives that you've seen of my work, the creative work, and the one that archived the book was based on, which is editorial work, in
Hmm.
fact. I pull from that education that I got in that little salon, not from Sassoon. Sassoon taught me to cut, and he taught me to think differently.
Right.
Completely changed my for hair cutting. Today I still cut Sassoon technique, but I've eased it off. So
Mm.
where we would take an hour, step by step by step, I kind of have softened that off, but the arithmetic of all those haircuts back then had a method. Everything was about numbers and a method, a way to cut. And those recipes, as I call them, are still very solid in my head today. I have just kind of eased them off to be a more modern look for today, but
Right.
the recipe is there.
Sure.
But I sidetracked then. But so most of the work I do is not about cutting. You know, I cut my celebrities' hair when they ask me to cut it. But most of my celebrities have long hair, and you know, I'm not doing asymmetric or anything really. It's basically just long, beautiful hair, layering sometimes. Maybe it's a bob. The rest of the time, especially with editorial work, you have to create, and you really need to know your hairdressing, and you really need to know your decades of hair within hairdressing. I'm not saying that you're repeating decades, but when you're on an editorial shoot, everybody usually follows hair. First you see the clothes, then if you're a brave enough hairdresser, you speak up first. And you say, well, I think we should transform this to that. We do this hair, we do that hair. And usually the makeup follows.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Hair has an enormous amount of power on a photo shoot. It can make or break a photo shoot. And it can turn an outfit into a certain direction. So it could be, you know, you could take, how do you say, you turn it, the hair really places it in a certain epoch or futuristic or past tense or urban or glam. It's usually the hair, the key that pulls that together. Really, maybe I'm saying that because I'm a hairdresser, but I really, really do believe that. Hair is one of the most important, and I think any good photographer out there will tell you, apart from fabulous clothes inspire everybody. But hair is first of all, one of the most, I've heard this so often, it is so hard to find a good editorial hairdresser that can actually just pull styles out of their back pocket and create them. So what I was saying was you have to really know what was turn of the century hair, what was the 1910s, 20s, 30s, pre-war hair, 50s hair, 60s, 70s, 80s. You got to know all this stuff. I'm not saying repeat it because you don't want that. That's dead talent. What you want to do is to take the inspiration from those decades and transfer it to today. Make it your own.
Sure. And I think that even if you intended on repeating it, it would still be modern. Like you could try to replicate it, but it would still translate. And I think a lot of companies lose touch with that, the ground level basics, because you can refer back and be modern.
Yeah, you know something that I've discovered, I discovered this years and years and years and years and years ago. And that's one of the reasons why 2 decades, 3 decades later, I was doing all those hair campaigns around the world. I really believe this was the best education ever. So when you don't use hairspray is a killer. I've done masterclasses just to teach hairdressers to please put the styling products down. Work, and they are like, oh, I need my hairspray. No, you don't need your hairspray. If you do your base perfectly, your hair will obey you. You will, I mean, in that book, Archive, there's a mohawk there. I did without hairspray. I did without gels. You just got to know what you're doing and believe in it. So I will, for example, never pass the base of a hairstyle to a junior to do. Not even if that junior has been with me for 3 years or 4 years on set. I always do the base myself, because when I'm doing the base, I am thinking exactly what I want that hair to do. So by the time I take the base out or drop it down or whatever I'm doing with it, that hair will obey me, because again, you're going back to arithmetic, you're going back to every single section, you know exactly where you want it to be or what you want it to do. I'm talking about coiffure. I mean, and then you've got the complete opposite. If you're doing something very raw and organic, then you have to have the control to know that maybe nothing needs to be done. It's perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that's another mistake that a lot of hairdressers make. They feel like they've got to touch and they end up losing it. Yep. So it's just that, but a lot of that comes with experience, actually.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Man.
Did I answer that question? I probably did full circle. Oh, what I wanted to say was, so what I wanted to say was that little salon back in Tasmania,
right.
As an editorial hairdresser, I pull on all those coiffure that I learned back then. Mm-hmm. I learned how to put a roller in. I learned how to back comb. I learned how to do a wedding chignon. I learned how to do a French roll, like an Alexander French roll. I learned all those things. You don't learn that at Sassoon.
Sure.
You learn the best cutting technique in the world.
Right.
So what I draw on is that experience from Tasmania.
Well, I've said this in my interviews 1,000 times, but I came up in the early 2000s with Tony and Guy, and there was no coiffure at all. There was just a flat iron and shattering hair as much as possible. So when I came to LA, where I started doing session work and assisting people who were, you know, big names that would come out to LA, I really got schooled hard. It was something that was a harsh realization that I was going to need to stop and refer back to the basics. And it's a practice too. It still needs to happen. It's a rude awakening.
It's kind of, yes. We should do some good master classes.
I agree. I totally agree. We have a space for you to do it now, so I'm excited. So you had this early training in Australia where you actually learned how to dress hair, which was fantastic. And you said you still pull on that. Was there someone there who was particularly interested in that, or was that just the tone of hair at that time that you just had to know that?
Sorry, I missed that. I was looking at some names that I knew passed by.
No, it's okay.
Okay, sorry.
Wave and talk to whoever you want. It's all good.
No, tell me.
But so the coiffed hair at that time that you were learning in Australia, was there someone in particular that you focused on that was showing you the ropes, or was it just the overall tone of the salon?
No, learning what I learned in that little salon, that's what they were all doing.
Right. Okay. Cool.
That was what they were doing, and this is what I was learning to do.
Mm-hmm. So then you took this time away from that salon and you went to London and you worked with Vidal.
At Sassoon. So that technique actually changed my philosophy about hair immensely, because you can imagine I came from a salon of coiffure. You know, I saved my pennies. This really makes me sound like a dinosaur. So I saved my money and I took a ship, which was the last boat, Sydney to London. It was the last ocean cruiser of P&O called the Arance. I was on that last voyage. It was 6.5 weeks on the sea. Can you imagine? That doesn't even exist anymore. Sydney, London. And arrived
That's insane.
as green in London. But anyway, yes. So
many questions.
That's the technique that I took back to Australia. And that's an interesting moment as well, because I had a salon. I went back to Tasmania, in fact, because my parents bought a salon.
Okay.
So I kind of went back to take over that salon. And
Did they do it because they were in the industry, or they just knew it would be a home for
They
you?
had money to invest, and they knew that
Okay.
Wendy would come home.
Gotcha. Cool.
But then I ended up buying the salon off them. I mean, we had such an amazing team. I formed everybody into the Sassoon method, and we had a 6.5-week waiting list. It was crazy.
Wow.
6.5. There were 16 of us. 16.5-week waiting list. In the end, there were 16 of us. It was non-stop. It was so phenomenal. We really changed hair on the island. And then a buyer came along, sold the salon. I ended up in Melbourne. I was married at the time. My husband was a bit of an entrepreneur. Actually, I kind of missed a bit then. He made me the most he built me the most amazing salon with spas and manicures and all that. I will say there was some very great talent that came out of that salon. Very great talent. Anyhow, so,
sorry, that salon was in Melbourne that he
No, he built it in Tasmania.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Then we sold that, went to Melbourne, and I was working, not for very long actually. I was working with Edward Bill back then. He was also a Sassooner.
Okay.
And he had brought also, around about the same time, the technique back to Australia. And so I was working in that salon in Toorak. And I got a phone call one day from Australian Vogue.
Mm-hmm.
So this is another door that opens, right?
I love it. Yeah.
So, oh God, Australian Vogue. And I got invited to be on a photo shoot. Honestly, back then, everybody knows what a photo shoot is now for hair. But back then, I didn't know what that was. Mm-hmm. I just knew kind of that I needed to take a blow dryer, a brush. I mean, you should see what I travel with now. I have 3 suitcases.
Right.
When you put extensions and all the other bits and pieces in there. So when I think about it, I'm so surprised that I even managed to get invited back to do more Vogue, because I didn't know what I was doing. I gave the girl a blow dry. However, it just so happened that he was the hot, Monty Coles, the hot photographer for Vogue at that particular time.
Cool.
And they liked, and they invited me back.
So I have to ask, what was the look ultimately for that shoot?
It was an 80s look.
Okay.
Very 80s.
Gotcha.
Pretty horrible.
Okay.
No, I mean, is there any good 80s? So it was all about kind of natural curl, you know, kind of.
Right.
Yeah. She was a beautiful model. She was one of the top models as well. So, you know, I kind of landed, this just kind of fell from the sky into my lap. And I will say to you, I was a bit nervous because I didn't know. It was new territory to me. And I really didn't know what was expected of me.
So on that note, I just found that quote from your dad about nervousness.
Oh,
and
yes.
Thought, I wish I had heard that quote 10 years ago, because my nerves have always been something I had to conquer in these situations. So could you relay that quote for us?
My dad saved my life so many times. I can remember being so nervous about a situation, I would almost be vomiting. And then I hear his words, and they've stayed with me for life. I mean, these days it's very rare I get nervous because, you know, I've had experience, but there will be occasions maybe I might just kind of think, oh, okay, it'll be fine. Do your best. You can't do better. So my dad said to me, never be afraid of being nervous, because when you're nervous, you can count on yourself. You know that you're going to perform your very, very best. And it is so true.
Sorry.
You see a parking ticket?
No, somebody just parked in front of me and he's making sure he's good. It's so funny. Okay, sorry. That was the
So
worst
he
timing.
thinks you're speaking to yourself. He doesn't realize you're speaking with Paris.
Right, I know. No, high stakes right now. So, sorry, let's do that again. So he was talking about being nervous and how you can rely on yourself to do your best at that
And
point.
he's kind of right. I believe in life what you do have to worry about is kind of being blasé, because then you can't count on yourself to do your very best.
So
Never be
true.
blasé.
I think that is incredibly important to, in a sense, at that point, lean into your nervousness. Like, embrace it. That'll probably keep your hands from shaking if you know that this signal from your body is a positive
Well,
one.
and also, I've tested and tried that so many times, and it calms me down.
Awesome. That's so
So
good.
I
Go
kind of
Dad.
know, I kind of know that it's going to be fine. I
Right.
remember it was just a couple of years ago, it was about 4 years ago, I had to go, I was flown to Germany to speak to influencers. I mean, influencers are pretty powerful.
Hmm.
And, I'm not an influencer. And they had me on stage speaking to these influencers. And I was just like beside myself. I was so nervous, and then I was just about to be called on stage, and then I could hear my father's words in my ears, and it was just like, you can do this.
So good.
And out I walked, and I spoke to these 2,000 influencers about, be sure you keep integrity. Don't spoil it.
Right.
Be honest. So
Integrity is a great word because there's not a lot
integrity
of
is everything.
it.
Let me tell you, it is everything today. With social media as it is one of the most important keys, I believe. Same for brands,
Hmm.
same for everything.
Right. And you are dabbling in all of it right now, which is really amazing. But before we get into that,
Yeah.
you rode the editorial train for a while before kind of your first like celebrity.
Oh, celebrities came because,
Mhm.
so let's talk about the third decade. Oh, well, so the second decade was falling into freelancing. And that took me to New York for a couple of years, back to Australia. I've been fascinated with France since I was a little girl. And I wanted to do the French experience because I wanted to live amongst the Latins.
Mhm.
So I made it happen courageously, actually, because I didn't know French when I came. I kind of struggled with it. But I was in love with France. And Paris, for me, they say Paris is a Virgo city. I'm a Virgo.
Mhm.
Oh, we just get on so well. Every time I'm in Paris, it's just like, oh, so beautiful. The colors, even the grey sky, everything is just so harmonious, and everything's like a water painting. So,
Sure.
I'm sure I've had, if it's such a thing that exists, people have other lives. I'm sure I was French many, 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 many times.
There's no French blood in your
Excuse
heritage.
me?
Do you have any French heritage at all?
No, Irish and Scottish.
Okay. Okay. Just making sure.
Irish and Scottish. But my husband's French and my daughter's French, so
Oh, cool. You've got it.
yeah, I have a life in France.
Right.
Then I ended up here in Paris, and a lot of the archives that you see in Archive, the book about hair, were my editorial archives done through Paris.
Cool.
And then I fell into, which was marvelous too, it was another decade, doing an enormous amount. At its peak, it was 3-4 international flights a week out of Paris, around the globe. I mean, big. I mean, I would be 14-hour flights. I'd be in Asia, in India, in Middle East, all around Europe and America and South America, doing high-end campaigns, hair
Okay.
campaigns.
Cool.
A lot of the people on those campaigns were A-listers.
Mhm.
That was the beginning of getting A-listers in my chair, actually. And, you know, when an A-lister likes you or likes what you've done with them, they will invite you back.
Right, right.
And they will stay with you. They are very fidel. So you end up doing everything with them.
Is it true that was Elton John your first
Yes.
celebrity? Because that's mind-boggling. If somebody
that
told...
was another scary moment. That was like, Dad. Yeah.
Yeah.
He was divine.
I have a friend here in LA, Pamela Neal, and she was David Bowie's hairdresser towards the end of his life. And
nice.
It's almost the same thing where you are going to try to enhance the look of somebody who's already so creative and huge.
I cut his hair. So I was in Australia back then. So he was doing a tour and he needed a haircut.
Mm-hmm.
And so I cut his hair.
Cool. Yeah, so I bet that
it was like, oh wow, this is and there was another one actually. You guys probably don't even know who this is, but I remember. There was Cliff Richards. Do you remember Cliff Richards? No, Cliff? You don't know who he is. See, I really am a dinosaur.
It's a musician?
Pretty amazing for me. Cliff Richards.
He was a musician?
Yeah, he was a musician. Yeah, he was.
Okay.
Yeah. I think he was an actor too. I can't remember.
After this interview, I'm going to look him up. I'll touch base with you.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. We're going back a long time.
So you started getting these A-listers and traveling for them?
So on these campaigns, I was getting the A-listers in the chair, and then they started to book me for other things. You know, this was the, say, the last, the decade before Iles Formula was that, in fact. So actresses, and they still kind of are, took over from where top models were and were endorsing an enormous amount of money campaigns.
Right.
Perfume, skincare, lingerie, aerobics, whatever, cars, you know. They were doing it all. So I kind of was very, very busy at that time doing all that. So that's how, and celebrities also, when they're very happy with something, like good news travels very fast inside Hollywood, as does, somebody knows Cliff. You know Cliff? Oh, yes. I should stop looking because then I get distracted. What were we talking about? I forgot it already.
Hold on. You said that, Hollywood news travels very fast.
So, celebrities, when they love something, they'll talk about it. So good news goes through Hollywood as fast as bad news does. So you need to get it right. Right. Or you're dead forever.
No pressure.
So, and they're very, as I said, fidèle is a French word. I'm sorry, I said that before. They are very loyal.
Gotcha. Okay.
So once they have you in their circle, it's a very intimate circle, and they really count on you. And yeah, I'm kind of very old school too. I think that is something that helped me immensely. I mean, I will never take out my camera around a celebrity, for example, especially in her home, because she's there with her children or her husband. I mean, she's in her own private space. You're not going to be clicking. I would never, no matter the age of the celebrity, not even if she's clicking, I still wouldn't do it. I have very old school rules about that.
I think that is something that people are, people take the camera less seriously because it's never in everybody's hands, but on set, especially if you're assisting or you're planning to assist someone, it's very important just to, if there's any question in your head, just don't do it at all.
Don't do it.
Yeah.
You're better with, you know, it's just a picture. What is it going to bring you? A couple of likes, maybe a couple of followers. It's just a picture. You can live without.
Good advice. Did yours, so going from editorial and starting to get into the celebrity stuff, I imagine income changes. Did your style change too? Did it start to
Well,
evolve?
yeah, hair change, because, you know, when you work with celebrities, it is about them and their wishes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm not going to go and give her a mohawk or,
Right.
or you know. So, and it's about them. They're the personage. So everything is about them. You can advise, and when they get to know you, they'll always ask for your advice. What would you like to do? Oh, there's the dress. What would you like? What do you think? You know?
Sure.
And then, you know, it becomes, you know, you speak about it. But to begin with, they know what they want. You're just there to deliver it. Mm-hmm. In the beginning.
Right. Were you able to, was that enough for you, or were you able to find ways to stay on the editorial side or stay sharp there as well?
Well, it's really, really hard to say yes to editorial when you've got these whacking money jobs.
Sure. Absolutely.
You know, but at the same time, it's really important to still be creative. Mm-hmm. Still be creative. And when you can, get to do those editorials. Yes, I kind of, it changed, how do you say that? So those celebrities, because they're so loyal and because they work so much, kind of ate up the entire agenda, really.
Sure.
You have your other clients, but the time they're all doing it, you have no real spare time for anything else. However, I found it a very, well, also I'm more mature. I'm 20 years older now. I'm with these women. I've been in the business a long time, 30 years older, in doing hair. So the relationship was different. When you're working on editorials, you have a model in your chair and the model changes every day, and then the model goes off and you may see her again, but you may not, you know, it just depends. Or you may see her next month, or you may see her, you know, it's bad on it, or you may never see her again. With a celebrity, you're seeing her all the time. Mm-hmm. So a relationship sets in. And I could go as far as saying a friendship sets in.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
And this is very nice, and it's very, very different to have that level of workspace with a friend. But on saying that, still, I'm very old school. Even though I'm aware of that, I will always work like a professional. Right. You know, I always work with the white towel down. I always make sure that everything's ready for her to arrive. I will never be late. I will always clean up before I go. I always make sure she's taken care of. You kind of become more a nurturer when you're working with celebrities. They really count tremendously.
Sure. I've never gotten to the level where I would call celebrities my clients necessarily, but I have had to fill in for friends who had them as clients.
Well, remember also that they're the ones, I should tell you this story too, because my formulas, for example, it's because of my celebrities wanting to buy my products, and I couldn't deliver because I wasn't manufacturing, that Iles Formula became a brand.
Right.
They were giving me 6 months, 12-month orders. There's a lot of royalty in there too, because I was doing royalty, as well as those celebrities. So I have a lot to be grateful that the first one sat in my chair, honestly.
Right.
I wouldn't have a brand today. Not that, you know, it was never my plan to have a hair brand ever. It takes an enormous amount of courage to do that. And however, I made those formulas for myself. Am I jumping forward now?
No, go, do your thing.
No, because I'm thinking of the celebrities and I'm thinking,
Sure.
oh my God, I wouldn't have Iles Formula if it wasn't them that was pushing me to buy these formulas, and I couldn't deliver it to them because I wasn't manufacturing. I was going in once a year to make up enough stocks for my own work. And I had none to spare. So to deliver it to them, I had to go into manufacturing. And that's why, you know, my signature box, the one with the 3 in it, the 1, 2, and 3, the beautiful box. That's why that got created, because they were giving me 6-month and year orders. So I went in, I found a manufacturer that would do, you know, take small orders. That was tough because number one, nobody knows who you are. Number two, you're coming along with formulas that are off the charts. They don't even know what those ingredients are. It was so hard for me to find a manufacturer that would even be bothered with me. And then I found a family brand, a family owned manufacturer that said, yeah, I'll make them up for you. And he did. And so each celebrity that made the order got 12 of those boxes, and that was their year's supply. Right. And I'm like, okay, well, it's done now. You know, it's done now. They've got it. I'll go in next Christmas and remake their orders for the year after. It was a no-brainer, actually. It was so easy when I thought about it. But then the rest is history. Salons started to hear about Iles Formula. And department stores like Bergdorf Goodman and Neiman Marcus came knocking. So the rest is really a very beautiful story. And now I am president of Iles Formula.
Yeah, and it's amazing. Yeah, it's really great. I think that those the box with the 3, I mean, it's a super easy sell too. It's
as fresh after 14 hours of filming as what it was when you went on set at 8 a.m. in the morning. Right. And the serum was designed for that.
Got it.
Okay. So if I had a little bit of fluff, I worked with that serum all day. If I had a little bit of fluff, I put the serum on it. And, you know, if you have cobwebs in the neck, you put the serum on it. And you just keep applying the serum. And see, the thing with my serum is it doesn't weigh the hair down and it never goes greasy. So it was the perfect thing. And then you can brush it through and it's as if it's not there.
Right.
So that's the thought behind those 3 signature formulas. The thought behind them were for me and my problem working with tortured celebrity hair on set. I made them for me. I didn't make them for anybody else. Right. I made them for my job and what I had to execute and deliver, which was sumptuous, gorgeous, nurtured hair.
Right, right. Which is very much your style. I think, you know, that's what you see a lot.
You know, it's interesting because if you give me, maybe a lot of my archives, you see that. But if you give me the option to do something, I probably want to do something very raw.
Okay. Give me an example.
Give you an example. I'm very good at, I think, when a model walks in, I can access her hair immediately and know that I must not touch it. Because it just has the right accidents in it.
Right.
And that's kind of experience too, knowing that. And it's also that is more difficult to actually execute than doing a whole hairstyle. Yeah. Because, you know, it's very tempting to think, maybe that accident there's not right. Or maybe I should, the moment you start touching something that looks good or looks like an accident, then you've lost it. You'll never get it back.
Right.
I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it totally makes sense. It totally makes sense. I mean,
That's probably the hardest thing to do.
sure. Sure. It's very hard to create something that looks like it just happened to.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
maybe the second hardest thing to do.
True.
Yeah. Well, that's fantastic. I have many more questions about your journey, but I think right now is a good natural place to stop before we get cut off by Instagram. But
Oh, really? It's gone already. You're right.
yeah, it's gonna come quick. I was interviewing somebody the other day, and it just cut off. Yeah, it was not a good.
Oh, I saw that. You did actually. We do have to come back to this because I was watching a part of that. I kind of come in where you were both speaking about there's not many women hairdressers out there.
Totally.
Okay, I
with
heard
Michael
that.
Gordon.
I thought about it until now, and
Right.
I really want to answer that.
Okay.
You think I'm going to get cut off?
I think we have maybe 5 minutes.
Okay, that's hard for me, but I'm going to say it.
Say it, please, and we can come back to it.
So there are some amazing women hairdressers out there, and I've crossed many of them in my years. However, a lot of women do have an agenda, or we're on a time clock. If you want to have babies, you kind of have to take time out.
Right.
And I believe, like me, for example, I took 10 years. Those editorial years, actually, when I was working, I didn't take 10 years off, but my baby was born and I decided not to do any international trips. I stayed and only worked in Paris until my daughter was 10. So, you know, you need, if you're going to have a child, and any woman out, any hairdresser out, any woman out there will know exactly what I'm saying, and especially the hairdressers, because this is what we're discussing right now. Why are there not so many women hairdressers out there still standing? It's because we are on that time clock, and children come into our life, and then you dedicate your time to your children, and then it's not always easy to get back in to your work. Sure. And especially in the fashion business, you know, takes a lot of juggling. And I was lucky because my second husband, Jack, who is now the CEO of Iles Formula, he absolutely believed in me. And when our daughter was 10, he kind of was the one that stayed around our daughter, and that is when the celebrities came in and all those travels. Wow. And he gave me every encouragement to go and do these jobs, which I did, which opened up a whole new career for me. But up until that point, I was driving to Paris every day, coming home, and yeah. So I kind of think that's got something to do with your answer. Did you think about that?
I have thought about that with hair in general. With being a hairdresser, whether you're in the salon or on set, that is definitely a factor. I think that some of the absolute best hairdressers out there are women. They have a touch and an approach that is different than a guy does a lot of times. And
see,
I think
that's something I wanted to bring up too, how yeah, I agree, it's different. There's something very sensual for a woman to have a man touch her and work with her hair. I get it. Look at all the TV publicities. Do you ever see a woman doing a woman's hair? It's always a guy behind the beautiful woman doing her hair. There is that seduction exchange. But women, I think, I don't want to say the wrong thing, but they're good with coiffure, I believe.
Yeah, sure.
I don't know. I don't want to hurt. I mean, there's a lot of great guy hairdressers
no.
that I just love. I think you guys are fantastic as well. But women approach hair differently. That is true. I do believe. And I don't know what else to say.
Well, I will say that the people that I enjoy learning from the most in hair are generally women. There's a few exceptions there. I think that that there can be just a more familiarity with women and hair because they grow up having to do their own hair a lot of times. Guys will generally have short hair as kids and stuff like that.
You know,
go ahead.
Right. You're absolutely right. And you do a lot of those coiffures on yourself. You know, when I was working on my formulas, when I was actually, I mean, I tested them also on that world circuit, but it helped me so much knowing how to fine tune those formulas by using it on myself and wearing it and living with it.
Yes. I think, you know, obviously in this world we live in, unfortunately, men tend to naturally have the upper hand. But with hair
that's fine. God, we don't want a planet without men.
Right?
I love men.
It's good to hear. But I do think women as hairdressers as a craft have an upper hand, and it's a beautiful thing. I do. I think it's great. Just for the reasons that we mentioned before. Hopefully, if you and I can do a part 2, we can delve into that a little bit more.
With pleasure. With pleasure. I think you guys, as far as cutting goes, I mean, you're unbeatable because you cut fearlessly.
Right.
Maybe women take it a little more. They're not quite as fearless with a scissor or a razor or whatever it might be. Maybe that's the difference between men and women, maybe.
Well, you can see it in haircuts often. You can see it in the way something's cut is, if it's cut by a woman or a man, there can be more elegance to it, or it can be just a stronger shape. Just depends. I've ventured into using a razor because doing the fashion scene, I've met so many Bumble people. And so most of my teachers have been women, and they have a touch that I'm really trying to learn to balance out my hair cutting. But
fortunately, we're all different.
Yes,
fortunately,
it's a very great, diverse industry that we work in, and I'm super happy to be.
It's a beautiful industry. Honestly, I hope I can hairdress until the day I die. I am so in love with hair.
Well, let's end on that note. We got our 2-minute warning. I've enjoyed it so much, and I'll be in touch.
Thank you to everybody. Yeah, thank you to everybody that joined in. We appreciate you
very much. This will go on our YouTube channel, so we'll be able to. Anybody can watch, and I'll send you all the things. And I hope I can see you in person soon.
Yeah, well, let me back into America. I'll be there as soon as I can.
I'll make some phone calls.
Thank you.
I'll see you soon, Wendy. Thank you so much.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.